All right, guys. Good news and bad news. Good news is I got the microphones. Bad news is there's nowhere to plug it into my Chromebook. So I apologize if the audio is no good. What we need to look at is we need to look at the causes of the French Revolution real quick. When we look at the tricolor, we're looking at liberty in the blue, equality in the middle in the white, and fraternity on the right-hand side on the red. This is the slogan of the French Revolution. The people wanted liberty, they wanted equality, they wanted fraternity. And when we talk about equality, we're not talking about black and white. We're not talking about men and women. We're talking about men. Uniquely, it's men who are all men who are citizens, don't necessarily need to own property in the French Revolution. And we're looking at equality between the estates, the first, the second, and the third estate. One of the things that's really nice about this graph is that it shows you what percentage of the population it is. Less than 1% for the first estate, a little bit over 1% for the second estate, and the third estate makes up 98% of the people. The interesting thing about that is that the first estate gets 10% or a little bit more of all of the land. Okay? The second estate gets 25%. And the third estate gets 65%. Now, that doesn't seem too unrational, except to say that France has an estimated population in 1789 of around 20 million people. So if you look at 98% of 20 million, getting on 65% of the land, and less than 1% or a little over 1% getting on 25% of the land, you can see very clearly that the second estate is the wealthiest estate. The first estate has a 10% land value because they're the church, and so they've been tithed that land by the king. The third estate, comparatively, pays 50% of their income in taxes, which, as you can imagine, is a super hardship. The richest people in the country pay 0% and 2% of their income, respectively. So when we're looking at the equality piece, like we talked about, the first estate is not equal to the second, is not equal to the third. These guys are doing all the work, and these guys are getting all the rewards. In addition to that, when we look at the National Assembly and the Estates General, these guys get one vote, one vote, one vote, and so they're always constantly outvoted. So let's talk about the causes. We talk about loss of liberty. We're dealing with deficit spending and absolutism. The trouble is that the king has all the power and the people have all the responsibility. And the king is overspending and borrowing most of this money, which leads us to the problem of debt. In France, they spent over 50% of their taxes on paying down their debt. So just on the interest of the money that they had borrowed. In the United States, we have $20 trillion in debt, but roughly, I think it's like 5 to 7% of our budget is spent on paying down our debt. So the people have hope, but accept less. The Estates General is called. The king actually needs money, and so he asked the people to get together, put together these notebooks of complaints. They're called cahiers, which is French for notebook. And when they get together, the two estates come together to meet. The third estate comes together to meet, and as they vote out, they get 2 votes for 1. And unfortunately, the first and second estates always vote against the third estate. So rather than fight the battle and continue to lose the votes, the third estate forms the National Assembly. They declare not to stop meeting until they have reached a consensus. Tommy has a question, so we're going to pause right there. Yep, that's fine. All right.
Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. You can always just go to the bathroom. Which is a quick reminder, if you got to go potty, sign out, take the pass, and go to the bathroom. All right. So the social classes become more rigid and hostile. What's happening in the countryside? People are looking for bread, so they're going to the aristocrats' homes and their farms. They're burning their houses down. They're killing the people in there, and they're looking for bread. There's a rumor that was spread that the rich people were hiding the bread from the poor so that they can make more money. In addition, another example, the people go to the Bastille and the Hotel des Invalides to gather weapons, just like you read about yesterday. Again, the social classes, the third estate is becoming violent and hostile towards the second and third estate, or first estates. At the Bastille, they storm the Bastille, they take the weapons, and then they cut off the head of the governor. Next, the scholars, they give up on society. The Enlightenment ideas of Rousseau, Montesquieu, Diderot, and Voltaire. Not one single one of these guys is going to vote for an absolute monarchy or a monarchy in any way, shape, or form. They're advocating for rights, and they're advocating for the will of the people to rule, or at least separation of powers. The government does not respond to the leaders, and they join the opposition. Jacques Necker was the economic advisor to the king. He recommended that he tax the first and second estates to help with the deficit, and Jacques Necker was fired and then run out of France by the aristocracy. So he probably obviously joined the third estate, and his ideas were in line with that of the third estate. Next, the Marquis de Lafayette. The Marquis de Lafayette serves in the American Revolution. He fights with the American soldiers. He's an observer. He's a helper. He's an advisor to them. Upon returning from the American Revolution, looking at the development of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and the actual fighting that takes place, the Marquis de Lafayette is a leader. I wonder, obviously, from Jefferson's notes, I don't know true or false, but when we look at Jefferson's notes that we read yesterday, Marquis de Lafayette seems like the guy that would be helping lead the king into Paris. So he's the head of the Paris Commune. He's going to be the leader of that group that takes control and kind of calms the people down. Next, the government can't get enough support, and they're overspending, and we've talked about that. So, well, those are your causes. Make sure you get them in your notes. The last part of this is directions for tomorrow. So when you come in, you're going to finish reading Jefferson's report. We're going to discuss it. We're going to go over questions on the causes of the French Revolution, which you should have in your notes at this point. And then you're going to begin brainstorming questions for your genius project. A couple quotes here. Got Einstein here. What is the idea? The idea is that we're going to kind of put together a TED presentation that you are an expert on. And whenever you do this, we want a real life problem. So something that you think actually has value, something that you're going to have to learn all kinds of different skills to solve this problem. And it may even be something that we can't solve. But I'll have an example for you when you come to class tomorrow. And the basic purpose of it is to brainstorm a couple different ideas. As I'm thinking about my genius project, I'm kind of torn between looking at something that works in education and something that doesn't, or looking at something that I'm actually interested in myself, which would be like farming. So zero waste farming or limited waste farming. And so you'll have your project work report, your genius hour is the name of the project. It's going to be due towards the end of the year. And then we're going to report back. So tomorrow, what are you going to do? You're going to get your cell phone out. You're going to get your computer out. You're going to report topics of interest to expand into further research program. And you're going to narrow it down to a couple of options. And then at the end of the day, you're going to talk about what you accomplished and what are your next steps. So next week, when we come back to this project, what are you going to do? And then if you have any concerns or questions, we're going to talk about that at the end. And then everybody hopefully is going to have time to share those out. So it should end up being about 20 minutes of work time tomorrow. And this is the first time. So let's all learn it together and get it figured out and turn out some really great products.